Warning. This episode contains adult language and adult humor. Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults? If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Willie Murillo. Willie is a man of many talents. Besides being a top-flight session player, Willie is also an arranger, songwriter, producer, and vocalist. Willie is also an entrepreneur whose passion for education led him to co-develop the Practice app, a web-based way to practice with the pros. Willie is passionate, driven, and perhaps the best-dressed trumpet player in LA. So pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. Welcome to this week's episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang. My guest this time around is Mr. Willie Murillo. Mr. Willie, what's happening, babe?
Yee-hoo! California, we're still on lockdown.
West Side love. Oh man, how you making out, man? I mean, we got obviously the COVID situation going on now. As we're doing this session, we've got the wildfires. Man, how are you managing?
This has been a great time to. I got to be honest, man. If it's not easy every day to look at the positive, and I'm a fairly positive guy. Anybody that knows me knows that I have a real bent of joy in that way. But I will say that there has been some difficulty in staying positive through this whole thing. But I will say that through the positive that has come out of this is that it's like everybody else. You're able to slow down. I've cleaned out all my hard drives and gotten a lot of practicing done and and all that stuff. I mean, I do a lot of recording from home anyway, so that didn't change too much. I'm a creator of a new app, co-creator, I should say, of a new app called the Practice app. And so, it's a new business. And so anytime you're running a new business, it's madness and all kinds of crazy. So, in terms of like my franticness and busyness and all that really hasn't changed. I'm getting up every day and slamming away. And I've got 4 kids. One of them is just starting preschool. So, and my oldest is in high school. She's a sophomore. And so, I've got 4 kids in school, at home. And so, I mean, it's a handful. Luckily for me, my world hasn't changed too much. I mean, obviously playing live gigs,
right.
Is a different thing. I haven't had a chance to play with somebody live. I want to say since February. The last time I played with somebody in a room was February or something like that.
Yeah, I hear you.
I've been doing records and TV. There's not a lot of TV, but I've done some TV. And it's all me doing 3 trumpets or 4 trumpets here in the room. And so, but you know what, man, nobody here has cancer. Everybody's happy and healthy. We live in a beautiful community. My kids are flourishing, and I think that's all you can hope for in moments like these.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I hear you 100%. And actually, the whole idea of being able to find joy amidst the chaos, I mean, that is a skill that I think that if you don't have it now, hopefully by the end of it, you're going to get it, because that's the only way we're going to get through this thing.
Yeah, you don't really have a choice. You have to learn how to manage and not just get through. And there really is some good in the slowing down process and the peace and the quiet. And I've been able to spend a lot more quiet time with myself and, talking to God, talking to my kids, talking to my wife, spending time with the trumpet, writing, there's a lot of good that's come out of this.
Yeah, right. I mean, I have like my personal motto is, it is what it is. It becomes what you make of it. So yeah, this is a crazy situation, but you're going to see that a lot of people are going to come out of this way ahead of where they would have been, because they took advantage of the time to, like you said, slow down and clean the hard drives and
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So
I wanted to say thank you for doing this. This is really cool. And I've watched a bunch of your other episodes. I haven't gotten to them all yet, but I've watched a bunch of them, and it's so nice to obviously we're not, household names in terms of like being a Brad Pitt or something like that. So it's so nice when you can enter into a field like ours and go, who are these people that play on these records and movies and are sort of the under layer of what we have in our society. And it's really fun. Tom Walsh, obviously Jerry, I've known him and idolized him forever and ever. Tom is a phenomenal. Frank Green, I've been texting with Frank Green here and there, and he's just a funny cat. And so it's lovely how you, and of course with social media, it's beautiful, man. I think that there are people who I feel closer with right now that I think I've never met.
Yeah.
And, we're texting back and forth on social media. Hey, how's this? And what's that? And it's very easy to feel isolated in this business anyway, which is something I want to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, it's really easy to feel isolated. But, with social media, I mean, there's some great things. There's certainly some negative things that can come out of social media, but especially now that I have a 15-year-old daughter, you start to realize the landscape of what those things look like.
Yeah.
But man, there really is a beauty in community that comes with this. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Like we were saying, talking to each other earlier before we started rolling, I do this for me. This is completely selfish. So like for me, like one of, not that I'm not enjoying talking to you or to anybody else, but like you just mentioned, Jerry Hay has been my idol for years. I mean, since the 80s. And of course,
all of ours.
I had always dreamed of getting a chance to meet him and talk to him, and to sit down and interview him was just really a pleasure for me. So I mean, and this is what it's all about, because, like you said, you guys are out there. You're in the trenches. You're the ones that are doing the stuff that we're all benefiting from, and it really changes your perspective on things when you can put a face. And not only a face, but a personality, a person to the music that you're hearing. So, that's what I want to get out of this. So, so you just mentioned earlier, said that you wanted to talk about the concept of isolation in the music business. What's your take on that?
I think everybody has their own set of their own experience. Clearly, for me, I've had an interesting career. I feel like I've had some challenges in my career, like we all have. Nobody really talks about them. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, you're okay, I'm okay. We're all beautiful cats. We're all trying to do the best we can do. We're all trying to be good guys. But that's not necessarily true. Not everybody's a good guy. Mm-hmm. And when I talk about this stuff, I have a lot of people ask me when I do clinics and things at universities, and what's the music business like? What's the politics like? Et cetera, et cetera. And I go back to this one experience that I had with Dan Fernero, and he told me something that I just have treasured ever since. And Dan and I have been friends for a long time and have worked together and colleagues, and we're not particularly close friends. I've never been to his house for dinner, although we've had many dinners together. Right. At gigs and whatever, but he just told me something that I will never forget. It's super invaluable. I was struggling with a situation, a political situation. We were at an airport headed to a gig, I think with John Tesh. We had somebody missing, and I hired Dan to play second trumpet, and he came in and of course banged it up. And, it's always fun when you get to talk to people socially and you get to feel what they're about. Right. And just make connections. And he said, hey, listen, I know you're dealing with X, this thing that's happened. And he said, I just want to remind you of something. He said, just because you got an opportunity doesn't mean you took it from somebody. So I, have imparted those types of wisdoms to the pieces of wisdom to my kids when my kids are all high achieving and they're lovely kids. And everybody's made their fair share of mistakes. Mm-hmm. Everybody wishes that they could go back and do things differently. And I mean, everybody, and we tend to idolize guys like Wayne, who is a beautiful guy. I've loved, you know, I love Wayne. He's been a beautiful mentor of mine since I was 16 years old.
Right.
But you know, you ask Wayne and he goes, sure, of course. You know, I was a musical director for Arturo Sandoval for a couple of years when he first moved here. And one day I was having a really intense conversation with him just about history and some beautiful things. And he confided in me. He's like, look, I've made so many mistakes in this business. And he said, I won't tell you what it is, but he said, you know, I am no longer welcome to do this in our world. I'm not welcome in this circle or that, you know, and, you know, Arturo can be a beautiful guy. We've all made mistakes.
Right.
And so it's an interesting business in that your competition is also your referrals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's not often that I remember going to, at this house that I used to have, going to this tile place, this carpet and tile place. And I asked if they had a certain type of, you know, flooring.
Right.
Nope. And I said, do you know anybody else that does it? Nope.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to refer you to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a tire shop, they're not going to refer you. You don't have this size, who has it? Nope. I don't know. They're not going to, you know, but, you know, some of our best friends are the people that sit next to us. They get jobs when we don't. We get the job. We take their jobs, or somebody chooses us over them. And, you know, I remember very early on calling Wayne, and somebody had called me for something that Wayne had referred me to. And so, you know, you've got that kind of dynamic. And there's all these things where, and it's obviously not because I'm better than Wayne. You just don't ever know why somebody, you know, that you might be more comfortable to them, you know, because I was 20 years old and they could, you know, beat me up a little bit, or maybe it wasn't such high stakes with a 40-year-old Wayne Bergeron or something, you know, whatever it is. Or it's just easier dealing with a lower echelon guy sometimes, or, you know, it just depends on all these things. And so that becomes a series of isolated incidents. Even when you're on the bandstand, it's a real interesting thing. I live in, where do you live?
I live in Pennsylvania.
Okay. So I live in LA, and I grew up in a city called Whittier. Whittier is right kind of on the border of LA and Orange County. Most people that are in our business live, you know, I would say in LA, right? Silver Lake, Hollywood, Santa Monica, somewhere in there. So when I grew up, you know, I would do these rehearsal bands and all the things that people tell you to do. And, you know, it's by the time you beat LA traffic from Whittier to LA, you're leaving at 7 a.m. for a 10 a.m. rehearsal, and you're not getting home until 4. And so a lot of times I wouldn't do those rehearsal bands, and you've got to make these really tough decisions what to do. I had a family early on when I was like 24. I got married early, had kids early. And so you're making these really tough decisions, and all of a sudden you're out of the house. And I had a really long period of time there where I would, you know, be playing at the Pantages and doing, you know, some show, maybe it was Wicked or The Color Purple or, you know, whatever, some kind of show. And then all day long, you'd be doing like a double, and it was very exciting. You know, the kids were young, and, I'm at Capitol at 10 a.m., and it's very exciting. But then I kind of woke up one day, and I'm like, you know, I love all these people. There's nothing wrong with person X or person X. I just don't feel connected to them. It's not like being in a, you know, and I don't belong to any support groups, but, you know, it's not like being like in a support group or a church group or a neighborhood watch group or hanging out on the front porch, you know, with your neighbors barbecuing. It's a different kind of thing. And you develop these relationships over the years, and you go, man, there's a weird what do they call it? Water cooler talk.
Yeah.
Feel to what you know, and you hang around and you go to lunch for an hour. And if you do that 3 or 4 times a week, I go, man, I've seen, you know, Wayne or Dan Fernell or Rick Baptist or whomever, person X, I've seen them more time than I've seen my quote best friend or my family or my whatever. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying that there's an interesting isolation that happens, and I think it's different for everybody, right? Like I remember working at the Hollywood Bowl a bunch, you know, some years back, and going to Wayne's house in between. you know, and or you know, meeting people for dinner, and you just go, oh, this is cool. But it's different when you live an hour and plus away, and you know, and then you know, you see the history of people that are a little bit older than you, Malcolm McNabb, all the greats, John Lewis, and all these people, and the way they come up, and the dynamic between them and their mentors, and it's just a really interesting thing to navigate through. I think it's something you have to be aware of and navigate through, and it can be very isolating. You can go through, you know, I remember times when I've been, you know, doing doubles at, you know, Warner Brothers or Capitol or something, and then you go to a session at night, and then even if you go, hey, after we get done with this Broadway show, we're going to go to get a drink, or we're going to go celebrate this person's birthday. It's community. It's beautiful, right? Anytime you can be with people, but it's still, for me, I still felt isolated. You know, I was kind of the youngest guy. Maybe Rob Shear is another guy who's somewhat my age. I think Rob's maybe 2 years younger than me, something. But really, I was the only guy in my age group kind of coming up. I'm 45. So for many years, you know, I was 25, 26, 28, and Wayne and those guys were 41, 43. They were just in the height of, you know, and it's a really interesting thing, because you go, gosh, these are my work friends, but yet I have this whole other side to me. And I'm spending 90% of my time with these people, and they're beautiful people. I love them all. You know, it's just an interesting thing. Anyway, I'm just sort of rambling, but it's just an interesting dynamic.
Well, you know, that's one of those things that I think is rarely talked about. And for anybody who's interested in pursuing music professionally, especially music in a city like LA, so LA, New York, Nashville, places like that, where you're doing a whole lot of contract work, you know, I think you got to understand the landscape. You got to understand the nature of the game, because, you know, a lot of people just think, oh, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to make $1 million. Well, if you're a trumpet player, you can.
I got news for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I think, you know, it's the know thyself thing, right? Like I think I like to talk about real things as you know, the older I get, the more real I like to become, you know, about the personal things. You know, I've had an incredible career. I started very, very early. A story that I like to tell, I think I was like 22 or something, and Wayne got me on some date, and it was me and John Lewis was playing first, and then somebody else, I don't remember, maybe Larry Hall. And it was this thing for Danny Elfman. And, you know, here I am getting called up into the big leagues very, very early. And because of that, you know, you get excited, you get lucky, you have a long career, but you also make a lot more mistakes than maybe other guys would. And I remember this experience. It was like a cue that was, I don't know, 8 seconds. And it was like timpani, and then, and it was the loudest high C I had ever heard anybody play. It was John Lewis, who, you know, is famous for being this incredible, classical, delicate, beautiful player. And it was this moment where I went, I don't know anything. Whoa. And my whole eyes just went boom. And I was like, okay, got it. I got it. Like, I know, I understand what this, and how good these guys have to be. And I was like, I am not ready for this. But, you know, by the grace of God and friendship and luck, and, you know, I stayed in the game, and people allowed me to keep coming back. And then I would play a solo or play lead on something, or, you know, maybe I had slightly better classical chops than maybe some of the commercial guys around me or something. And, you know, you get these things. And so, you know, I've had good career things, but I like to talk more about the personal side, because I've made so many mistakes, and I've been on a big journey. You know, I got a divorce about 10 years ago. I come from a Christian family, literally was never even allowed to say the word divorce. I never thought it would happen to me.
Right.
And so I've had this incredible awakening about my childhood and who you are and why you make the decisions you do. And so that's been something really interesting. Then I met James Morrison about 10 years ago, and he sort of took me under his wing. And James Morrison, if for anybody that's watching this that doesn't know James, obviously you know his personality or his persona about being an incredible trumpet player, multi-instrumentalist, bass, piano, trombone, saxophone, clarinet, everything. He's unbelievable. But two things hit me right when I met James. One, he was comfortable in his own skin. And I would have to say that many of my colleagues are not. I watch guys who are 65, 67, 70 years old who are still acting like 20-year-olds trying to be accepted. And I go, okay, I can have grace on that. I don't have judgment, but I know that I don't want to be that way. I know that I want to be real. And that's who James is. He's just an incredible human being. He has his belief system in order, and you don't have to take it or leave it. He's not judgmental, but he knows who he is.
Yeah.
And that's something I always wanted, and I never really had until I met that. Then the other thing that I sort of discovered really early on, I remember, like, I was 27 or 28, or I don't even remember how old I was, but I remember I did 3 days of doubles on some movie, and I can't remember what movie. I want to say maybe Cars or Planes or Cars 2 or one of those Pixar things. And I remember walking in or walking out after my first day going, anybody would be thrilled to be here, but this is not it for me. And I've always been a writer, and I've always been a singer, and I've always been a producer. And so I kind of really dug into that hard, starting really early, 20, 25, 26, 27 years old. I dug in hard to that kind of thing, and I've been writing, and now I, produce, music for TV and film, and have done a lot of writing and producing of records for major artists, and just television and film and different things like that. And so I think that's where I tend to find the most joy, and I feel the least isolated is when I have my hand on the pulse of like a project, and then I get to choose the people that I'm around that work for me in those scenarios. And as you know, you don't always get to choose the people. There's always somebody with a pistol at your back, no matter what people want to pretend or believe. And, for the most part, people are on their best behavior, but you get moments. And so when I get to produce, I get to choose those things and create the vibe that I want to create. I get to put the goodness out there in the world and say, in my production, as for me and this project, we're going to be like this. We're going to spread joy and be filled with gratitude, and so on and so forth. And so that's kind of more my speed. I learned that right away.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this question then. You talk about James being comfortable in his own skin. Who is Willie? Who is that guy?
Well, I had a really interesting upbringing, and I'm still discovering, who I am. And I think we all are. I think I tend to talk about it more open and vulnerably, maybe to a fault, but that's okay. That's the journey I'm on. I'm really trying to figure out who I am and why I do the things I do and what makes me tick. I love music. I also grew up with a very, very high standard in my family. My parents had really high standards, and I think that's great. I was very low achieving in school up until about 9th or 10th grade, then very high achieving after that. And so I went through some really interesting paradoxical dynamics in my world where I was young for my grade. I was 13 when I went into high school. And so, there was a lot of insecurity. And so I think I didn't realize how good of a player I was. I don't think I realized that people liked me, and I wanted to, like, I got, I was voted like whatever, I don't even remember, most well liked or something. And I, in high school, and I didn't have any clue that that's who I was. And so I think I had my head so far in the trumpet and just skill, do. I grew up in church and a church life. I'm an avid Christian. I love Jesus, and I'm not afraid to say that in this day and age, and it's my belief system. Kindness is number one for me with people. And I think sometimes that doesn't totally work when you work in a very liberal group of people that are very about either you're with us or against us. There is that feel in our music industry. I think it's becoming less so because there's so many diverse opinions and people. And also for me, I think I've gained some respect over the years. People have seen me change and develop, and then I give work. So maybe there's a natural, thing when you're hiring people for TV or film, then they tend to soften or, whatever that is. So I'm a guy who I love to make music. I love to sit one-on-one and hear people's stories. I want to know what you went through, how it made you feel, what made you that's who I am. And I think that we're so afraid in this business to let people really know who you are, to let people, let me digress for just a quick second. One of the things that drives me absolutely bananas, and this is a thing I learned from James, is when people don't play at their master classes. Right. So I've seen master classes of some brilliant people and they're hardly ever play, or they just show you a mouthpiece thing, or they hold the tone. And we got to have and you go, I've heard you on like 1,000 movies or 1,000 this, and you're not going to play for me in these 2 hours. Like, what is that about? And I think what happens is that people are so afraid to be vulnerable and to let themselves know, to let people know who they are and that they're human, because all we know, like, we're going to vilify them or something. Of course we're not. You're human. We get that. You know, I will tell you right now, and I'm sure it comes to no shock, I have heard Wayne miss many notes on recording sessions. But I can also say in the same breath, I truly think, hand to Jesus, there is one guy in the history of the trumpet who could have played lead trumpet on The Incredibles 2, and that's Wayne Bergeron. There's nobody better that's ever walked the earth. And I'm not talking there's nobody that couldn't have played higher, or nobody somewhat as strong, or a bigger sound, or a better improviser, or a better class. I'm saying, knowing what I know about this business and sitting there with 100 people, and over and over and over, you have to come in and not there's nobody that could do that like Wayne Bird. There's nobody, not one person in this town other than Wayne that could do that.
Yeah.
I could play lead on one of those tracks. Rob Shear, Dan Fernero, there's 10 guys or with something that could play and do a great job and maybe sound just like Wayne for maybe one or two. But to do the whole thing 3 days in a row, 4 days without really missing and over and all my chops, this and that. No, I mean, there's one guy that's ever walked the planet Earth that could do that in the LA. And if you think I'm lying, then you haven't necessarily been in that environment where you go, oh, this is a different thing. You're in a room that you can hear a cricket move.
Yeah.
And then you have to do that thing. So so we tend to get very protective of our personalities.
Right.
And so people are not very vulnerable. They don't want to play other than when they, you don't, it's, and so it's not a very vulnerable group of people that we're dealing with, because you're dealing with perfectionists.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And when I met James, he was just incredible. He would say things and play things and he would miss notes. But I mean, when it counts, it's like he's just there. So that's something that I'm learning. So you asked me about 4 minutes ago, who's me? That's me. That's me. I'm learning how to be vulnerable. And I know I have great skill as a writer, as a trumpet player, but so do a lot of people. I know that I have experience, maybe more than some, which might make my skill level more than some. But that's what that is. If you got me on the tennis court with this guy, he might be better than me. Or if you got me on the racquetball court with that guy, I might be better than him. So I'm just trying to be the best guy that I can be and keep learning. And, obviously I'm an avid practicer. I love practicing.
Yeah.
I'm about it. And I love making music. That's one thing that you can't really say about anywhere else in the world. I mean, it's, obviously London's got a great scene and New York's got a great scene, and there's a lot of great players all over the world. But to have so many unbelievably skilled world-class players in one concentrated area, you can go on. I remember one time Andy Martin said to me, he said, if you think about it, LA is a very fair system. Like, you're never really going to go on some movie call and there's somebody there that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, that's very true.
That might happen once in a great while, but they're not going to last. You're not going to see
Right.
them on a second or third or fourth call for sure. And so to walk in every day and see that person or this flute player, and you go, oh my gosh, this person has the greatest oboe sound I've ever heard on the planet.
Yeah.
And they're right there, and you have a lunch with them. You get, it's so cool. And I think I didn't really drink that up as much as I wish I had when I was younger, because I was so busy just trying to get better and trying to be worthy of the life that I had been given.
Right.
I was trying to catch up, you know? And yeah, so anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really an important thing to keep in mind that, like you said, practice is so important. You know, as a musician, you have to practice if you want to get better. You want to continue to improve your skill. But I think sometimes a lot of people lose track that our development as a person is practice. And
right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just like
absolutely
with playing, you know, if you always play what you can play, you will never get any better.
Right.
You have to be willing to make mistakes in the practice room. You have to be willing to make mistakes on the stage, you know, if you're going to push things. That's why one of the reasons I love players like, you know, Freddie Hubbard and Woody Shaw, and, you know, that they were on the cutting edge of everything. I mean, they were always pushing themselves, and you listen to those recordings and it's like, ooh, that was bad. I mean, in terms of like, you know, that isn't what they wanted to play. Right. You heard the cracks, you heard them just crash and burn.
Yeah, and as a trumpet player, you feel what they're feeling in that moment. You go, oh, I know what you're thinking right now.
Yeah. But it's just, okay, that just happened, but that's behind me, and it's, you know, it's full steam ahead. And I think as people, we're often afraid, and especially when you're in a high profile position, when you're in that kind of competitive space, you don't want to make those kind of mistakes, whether it be musically, obviously, but also personally. You don't want to take those chances because you're afraid it's going to, you know, bite you in the butt.
Yeah. And I'll say, you know, I want to add something. I started to say about 2 minutes ago that I had two things happen to me somewhat in the same time period. When I met James was one of them. I mean, he's been a huge influence on me just about being comfortable in his own skin and being unapologetic. And he's always got great intentions, and everybody can, you know, you don't have to have a zero-sum game. Everybody can win in this scenario. He's beautiful that way. The other thing that happened to me is at the very height of, I mean, not high, I don't know height, but a super duper high point in my career was right about, I want to say, about roughly 10 years ago. And I don't know if you know, I'm sure you do, Yuan Racy. Right. So for those of you that are watching that don't know who Yuan Racy is, if you know who Malcolm McNabb is, if you know who John Lewis is, he was sort of the John Lewis or Malcolm McNabb before those guys. He was sort of the number one studio call, beautiful player. And like a James Morrison, Yuan Racy had this unbelievable mental game. Just unbelievable. Just, you know, he was one of those guys that could, and he would just exude love and kindness. So I studied him from a while. And anyway, he passed away. And right at this big height, Wayne's band played the memorial. And I was asked to write an arrangement for Wayne's band and for Wayne, and to conduct it of this song. It's called I Married an Angel, and it's kind of an old, it's not like a well-known standard, but it's, you know, it's American song. It's a standard. Mm-hmm. Chet Baker sung it. Louis Armstrong sung it. So I wrote this thing. Wayne played it. And I was so excited. And I remember I came to the memorial and I was kind of nervous. And, you know, it's a room full of 500 trumpet players. And,
right.
You know, and you're conducting the greatest trumpet player. And, you know, and so I kind of remember I came to this situation and I was like, and then after that was over, I sat there and I got to tell you, most of what people said, about 95% of what people said had nothing to do with his playing. And I remember that was right when I was going through my divorce. And I remember feeling like I have to make different decisions in life. You can't do the same and get different. You have to do different to get different. And I had fallen into this trap of being competitive and thinking things that probably only I thought and nobody else cared about or thought about. And meanwhile, I go, man, what is reflected on the outside is certainly not reflective of what's on the inside. I'm a lover of people. I'm a vulnerable guy. I care about things, people. Why am I not seen that way? And you know, it's because you're a climber and there's always a target on your back. And I had a lot of people, you know, like I said, Dan Fornero, Rick Baptist was very kind to me coming up. And I remember he said, man, you better be careful. You know, Rick Baptist said, you know, you're a fast climber and you're a great player and a great writer and a producer and you got all this work. But he's like, you're going to have big targets on your back. Be careful how you maneuver. Yeah. And so I remember right at that time thinking, what do I want people to say about me on my deathbed? If I get lucky enough to have a memorial where a city or a community of musicians, or some kind of community honors me in some way, what are they going to say about me? Are they going to talk about this thing I produced for the Super Bowl, or this commercial that I did, or the hundreds of this record or date, or like, nobody really cares about that. It's great to be a great player, and it's great to be a part of something that's an historic happening. If you think about it, what we do is a very historic thing. It's very recent,
right?
If in terms of history, obviously audio recording and the way that we do it hasn't been around that long. It's not like it's been around for 500 years,
right?
It's not been around that long in movies and the production, the way we do, So I thought, this is a fleeting thing. I want to be known for what's really in my head and in my heart. And that's not transferring. I need to make some changes so that what I think and what I feel is really transferring. And the love that I have for people and music and camaraderie. And so I made a lot of changes in my life, and I quit some things and quit bands, and, and so that's who I am, man. I'm a guy who I'm a lover of people. I want to encourage people. I'm a huge advocate of education. Mm-hmm. I do lots of clinics. My wife's a singer, and so we do guest artist things together. We'll go to Australia or, France or Germany or Japan or, whatever. And we'll do like a week-long residency and that kind of thing. I remember when I first met my current wife, she said, I feel like God put me on this earth to save 16-year-old girls from getting pregnant. And I was like, what? And she's like, we can do this thing together. And we have, man, we get tons of messages, Facebook, Instagram, and people that, oh, I'm so glad you impacted my life. They can't remember if I missed a high A or a high G on the concert or whatever, but they remember the time that we took to sit with them, and my wife put their arm around them, or I took a kid and said, let me talk to your parents about you wanting to do your dream instead of being a doctor like they want you to do. And by the way, I've had easily 30 conversations with parents like that and have flipped the narrative for them about doing what you love and why it's important. And so that's what we're about. We're about education. I'm about education. I love music. I'm an entrepreneur. I love the trumpet. I record all the time. I get to do all kinds of stuff. I'm a father of 4. I get to do that, which is a brilliant thing. So, I'm grateful, man, for the things that I've been able to do. And I'm very aware of the mistakes that I've made. And I don't think that I've made any more mistakes than anybody else necessarily. I think I've been granted more opportunities because I've been blessed. Therefore, maybe the percentage is higher. And I also think that I've been willing to talk about it, which nobody does.
Yeah. And there is probably one of the biggest mistakes is anybody can make, which is not just being honest about the processes. I'm a big proponent of a concept. Simon Sinek is the guy who wrote the book and kind of made it famous.
I know what you're.
About the why, and that's, to me, that's been very pivotal because I've gone through these kind of shifts in what I've done professionally. I played music professionally. I was a martial artist professionally, instructor.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did that for 30 years. Now I've shifted again. And I think the biggest thing that I learned in that process, and as I'm now approaching I'll be 60 next year, is that it's not about what I do. It's why I'm doing it. Because all of those things on the surface may seem to be different. It's like, well, being a musician has nothing to do with being a martial artist. Well, actually, yeah, it has a lot. There's a lot of the same stuff that goes on. And being a mindfulness coach and consultant and business consultant and things like that, all of these things are related when you get down to the why. And the why is, for me, my why is I'm driven to learn. I'm driven to share, to teach, and I'm driven to enjoy life. And everything that I do, if I'm learning if I'm then able to share and have joy, then it doesn't matter what I'm doing, you know, because it's about my core. So I think sometimes that, you know, we get too caught up in the I'm a trumpet player, I'm a musician, I'm this, I'm that. Instead
and
of
it's very shallow. It's not in the contemporary sense of the word shallow, where we think, but I mean literally, it doesn't have a lot of depth to it when you get down to it. There's so much more that people are. Well, let me. I'm going to veer just slightly to the right. One of my newest ventures is something called the Practice app. I'm a co-creator of. I started to talk about it, and that was birthed out of, you know, a few different things. But the short version is that it's an app. It's not a little thing. We've got, you know, significant. We've got about $1 million put into it. It's a very big, you know, project that we're doing. It's online lessons. James is one of our teachers. We've got great teachers from all over the world, and we also have like yoga instructors and you know, that kind of thing, and we've got jujitsu and, you know, all kinds of, you know, different stuff. Anyway, so the Practice app, and as I mentioned, James Morrison is on there, and it's not only online lessons, but it's other things that you want to hear from people, their methodologies, their psyche, and their inner game, and all that kind of stuff. So James, in one of his episodes, he talks about the why, about Simon's thing, you know, basically, and he says, which I think is just brilliantly put, and this kind of changed my life when I watched him video this thing. And he said, you know, I always look at like masters as like the lowest level of the top rung. And the people that concentrate on their why, you can feel that in them. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter what they're doing or how they're doing it. That's just superfluous. But when you feel somebody's why all the time about who they are, and it just speaks so loudly when they're taking out the trash, when they're talking to their children, when they're moving the car, when they're washing the car, when they're doing the highest productivity of their, particular job, and you can just feel that why oozing out of their pores. That's something that changed my life. Is why do you do what you do? Because you only have there's finite amount of breaths that you have in your lungs until you don't have any more, until that day comes.
Yeah, well, it gets down to your character, because I mean, to me, character is it's the way that you act, the way that you behave, where you don't think anybody's looking. So
right. Yeah, the integrity factor.
Yeah. And so I think that because I have made a study of successful people, of masters in whatever craft that they're doing, and that has been the secret to all of them. And it is not a secret. It's that you have to have passion for what you're doing, first of all, because it's not going to be an easy process. It's simple. The path to mastery is very simple. You keep on it. You surround yourself with people who can guide you and give you instruction, mentoring, whatever. But you got to do the work, and you have to be consistent about it. And the passion is what gets you through those periods where the rest of the world just wants to quit. But that the strong drive and the commitment, and to some people say it's the spiritual nature of it, because whether you want to think about a spirituality, with God or Allah or Buddha or the universe or whatever, there's something greater than all of us. And whatever you want to call it is what you call it.
Yeah, and when you tap into that and you have that walk along your why, or you have that actually lead your why, like for me, obviously, it's Christianity.
Right.
But I know, like for Yuan, it was kind of the same thing for him. Like, you can feel that. And I remember feeling that with like James and Yuan, and as I got to study with him, and, just some great, you just feel that, like who they are, you cannot separate it from them. And I think all too often, as there are in any career path, whether it's lawyers or doctors or teachers or garbage men or whatever you're in, there's people that are fake. They don't have that in them. They just want to do it. They're climbing at, please just let me be in the in crowd. Please just let me be in the, you know, and maybe they have some level of skill that would allow them to be in that crowd, but you just feel that. And I think the world has a way, like, like I think Gordon Goodwin, who is a good friend of mine, is a great example of that. He's a guy who knows what he believes. We've had some heated discussions about religion, about politics, on, you know, airplanes and trains and things. And,
yeah.
But he is a true lover of people, and he's a true inspirer, and he is all about his mission in music: create, and create beauty. And he does it, and it rejuvenates him. It's a thing, you know, you could just tell his belief system, and I totally respect that. I love him to pieces. I left the Fat Band about a year ago. Nothing weird. It was just kind of time to move. I had been there 13 years, and we still remain good friends. You know, we text every, I don't know, once a month or something, you know, just, hey, I saw this, or hey, great job on that, or, you know, whatever. And, you know, we've still worked together and on, but, you know, it's a small town, and he's one of the big writers, and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, enough of that you know.
Well, actually, let's get back just for a second for the practice app. So
please.
Yeah, because I remember seeing some stuff about James on that, and then you know, saw that you had other people on that. So what kind of was the driving force behind you creating this app, and where do you see this going? What is your ultimate why for this?
Yeah, so I've always been a big fan of education, and a few years ago, there's a organization here in Southern California called SCSBOA, Southern California School Band and Orchestra Association, and it's sort of like the Midwest Band Conference, or, you know, that kind of thing, right? Big thing in Southern California. So they asked me to do a big presentation, and they gave me a bunch of time, and, you know, they said, hey, we've never done this, but we want you to do like 2 sessions back to back. And so I said, great. And so brainstorming, I thought, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bunch of topics in a hat, and I'm just going to have band directors pull topics out, and we're just going to talk about them, right? And we're going to use it as a source of just conversation. So one of the topics was, your rhythm section needs to either rob a liquor store together or go camping together. And just, you know, and so then we would go, let's talk about it, rhythm section. Let's talk about why the symbiosis needs to happen. And then they pull out a topic and they say trumpet mutes. Oh, okay. And we go, how many of you band directors have issues with, you know, your kids don't know how to use mutes? But, you know, so I did this huge education conference. And I remember after it, I got so many compliments. People were like, oh my God, I wish I had like, you know, 10 episodes of a podcast to watch on each one of those things with you hosting it. And it was really cool and really informative from a professional, but you're also an educator, blah, 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 blah. So that kind of started dripping into my head, like, maybe I should do something more with this, because there are, as you know, a million situations where you get like, you know, some young, you know, 23-year-old, wide-eyed, dewy-eyed, you know, there's some amazing program in Michigan or something, you know, and the band director's 70 and he's had this award-winning band for 70 years or something. And here comes, you know, little Katie Wallflower from Muskegon or something, and but now she has this new job and she doesn't know anything about playing the congas, and she has to prepare, you know, how do they learn about these things? Right. So I thought, man, wouldn't this be cool if there was a source? So that started dripping into my brain. And then a friend of mine called me, a really good friend who I hadn't talked to in like 2 years, and he ran a multi-million-dollar company. And he goes, hey, I got this idea. And he goes, what if we do like a webinar thing, maybe with you and Arturo and Wayne and some of these other guys? And I go, yeah, I think there'd be like 11 people that would like that, you know, in the world. But we started developing it, and then it turned into this thing called Practice. And so, you know, like I said, we've got tons of money into it. We've got great investors and friends and people that believe in it. And it really is a spectacular thing. It's very representative of what I'm about. It's very inspiring, and it's light, and it's friendly, and it's not like large bodybuilders going, come on, it's not like a beach body kind of, it's very like user friendly, that kind of thing. And so the hope is that we just keep expanding it. We've got more investors coming and more lessons coming, more artists coming and people. And so we're pumped about it, man. And it's not just like we have Olympic athletes. One of our Olympic athletes is a guy named Casey Patterson. Mm-hmm. This guy is like the sweetheart of sweethearts. He's totally phenomenal teacher, but he's like, I didn't even know who he was, but he's like a Michael Phelps. He's like the greatest of all time kind of volleyball player. I didn't know. And until I started researching, I'm like, oh, this guy's a legend. He's a huge deal, mm-hmm. Olympic, whatever, So anyway, so that's our goal, is to just keep doing more of it and to inspiring students and just any people of any age that say, hey, listen, I want something new. I want something to walk me through, something to look forward to after my 14-hour shifts as a nurse, and I want to learn how to paint, or I want to learn the harp or the clarinet or, yoga or whatever. And so we're excited to present this thing. It's a really beautiful thing. The platform is phenomenal. We've got the most amazing teachers in the world. For people that are out there that know Masterclass, it's like that, but different, Yeah.
Well, just check the link in the show notes, and that will take you right to the Practice app, and you can see what Willie and the crew have got cooked up for you.
Beautiful, man.
And that's to me, this is so important because I've been, over the past few years, I've developing online content. Obviously, I'm doing this podcast as well, utilizing technology basically to reach people that need sources, and as I've said many times on this podcast, the backstory of this is that I've learned so much as a musician. Obviously, also as a martial artist, is the same thing. I learned so much during the hangs, and I really just feel like, and especially with COVID times, this is a perfect example. Because none of us can get out there and go to like an ITG or something like that and just, be in a conference for a week and just hang and talk. So even when things were opened, like you're saying, there's Katie Wallflower from Muskegon who has never had a chance to fly to LA or to fly to New York and to get into the in crowd, as it were, to talk to the movers and shakers. So this is an opportunity for people to get mentored by people who are really performing at the highest level possible.
Absolutely. And I got to say again, man, when I saw your email, I was like, absolutely, I want to be a part of this. Anybody, especially during this COVID time, that's saying, hey, I want to reinvent myself, or I want to further myself, or I want to better myself, and I'm going to do it by adding, a podcast or working on a video series or whatever, practice series or whatever you're doing. Man, you're an inspiration to us all, Jose, because just getting off your duff and saying, let's just keep pushing on the ocean, because that's really what we're doing, and who knows where we're going or what we're doing, but it's all for, the glory of hopefully something better and our enjoyment along the way. And so the fact that you're doing this is a beautiful thing, and I really am grateful to you.
Well, thanks. And I appreciate what you're doing with the Practice app, because, man, that's good stuff. Practice is my middle name. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah. So what's your approach to practice? So if someone's coming up to you, a young trumpet player, and saying, hey, look, Willie, I really love playing and I really want to improve, what are the things that I should really be doing that are going to give me the best results?
Well, I think it's interesting. Everybody is different in their own way, obviously physically and emotionally and mentally, their capacity. Emotionally, their capacity, mentally, right? Some people can sit there and go, and just concentrate on the most finite things. So one, I'd say you have to kind of know who you are. Two, you have to realize that there is no shortcut. You have to do the work. So my basic methodology is same things every day differently. That if you're a Navy SEAL, you know that you have to get cardio. How you get it, can be 10 different ways. Right. You know that you need arms, strength, legs, blah, blah, blah. So for us, let's say as a trumpet player, we know that we need, let's say flexibility, right? We want to work on our sound, or something like that. So every day you're going to be doing some kind of lip slurs. But it's interesting. There's this one guy who I played with coming up at Disneyland. This guy would do the same mouthpiece buzzing routine the exact same time every day. And I thought, gosh, I could never do that because my chops don't feel the same like every day. Mm-hmm. It takes me longer to get back to ground zero some days. Some days I just pick it up and, oh my gosh, it feels great. Most of the time not. But, so for example, if you're, this guy would do the same lip slurs every day and who's a very consistent player. Okay, I have to know that he's a different guy mentally, physically, emotionally than me. Right? And in fairness, he's probably not having to do the same types of, acrobatics that I'm having to do in the world that I live in. So let's just say I'm going to be doing like some slurs or something one day. Well, obviously I'll be doing, right? Let's just say I'm doing that one day.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going something real basic, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then the next day I might decide that I'm going to do open fourths, open fifths. And since I've had children, I've learned that you have to double up on everything you do because efficiency is the name of the game.
Right.
Right. So instead of that kind of stuff, the next day I might do the next day, and the next day I might do wider. I might do open fists or something like that. Mm-hmm. I might take some kind of if I'm doing like, let's say thirds or something like this. Let's just say I'm doing something like that. Okay, I might do it the exact same way the next day, but I might do it in harmonic minor, and I might do it slur tongue, two tongue. Or something like that, right? So it's the same stuff every day, mm-hmm. but different, right? So instead of playing, like we all have done a million times, like a Clark number one in the upper register going, or what, whatever, something like that. I might take something and I might go and I might play like, try to keep it on my face as long as I can for endurance and for compression. And I might do like diminished scale, like half a diminished scale. Or something like that. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's the same stuff every day, but different. To me, if I always tell students, if something happened and somebody said, hey, listen, buddy, you're going to jail for 20 years. You can take your trumpet and you can play 20 minutes a day, but you can only play one thing. You can play jazz, you can play tonguing, you can practice your classical music, your jazz music. Hands down, the one thing that I know for sure I would do would be lyrical playing because it has everything in it. It's got muscle, it's got beauty, tone, and all this kind of thing. So that kind of thing has been a real big benefit to me. I love playing beautiful things. So I might play, I have a million tunes that I've played by ear, and I'll play them with Nova. This is a Gary Grant thing. He taught me how to do this. Well, I studied with Gary for a minute, and he said, and this is when he was producing Malcolm, when Malcolm did the Tchaikovsky and all that kind of stuff. Mm. And he said, you need to practice with zero vibrato, zero flowering, so it's all just the purest of whatever. So I started doing this thing about 10 years ago when I was studying with Gary, where I would play little folk tunes or whatever. So instead of just playing Charlie and number 2 or something like that, I would play, like, let's say I would play, like Brahms' Lullaby. And I would do it in high keys with no vibrato, right? So I'd be like, and so on. And so, I would do things like that.
Right.
And I would make sure, and I would play until every note was perfectly in tune with the tuner and, that kind of thing. So, it's always like the Navy SEAL way, right? The hard way or the yoga way. The hard way is the good way. Right. So, I think we always have this sense of urgency as human beings that whatever we're doing in a given moment, that there's something more important. So, and there's subsets of that too. So if I'm practicing the trumpet, I'm always thinking, oh man, I should be out there spending time with my kids. Quincy's done with school. I should be throwing a football with them, or we should be on a bike. Right. So we always have this sense of urgency that whatever we're doing in a given moment, there's something more important. But we also have that in a subset. So whatever I'm practicing, I should be practicing something else. And so that's one thing that I always tell, my students and my friends, whoever I'm practicing, like everything you're doing is the most important thing because it's what you're doing. It's what you've chosen. Right. So if I'm practicing and it's just something that I sound like absolute hell on, whatever it is, I'll just beat it to the ground no matter what. So consistency, but I think the first thing is knowing yourself. Like, what are you about? I'm not like my friend Kurt Curtis, who's a phenomenal trumpet player in Disneyland Band, and I admire that. He can do the same routine every day and he's super consistent. His sound is gorgeous. I like to do different things. Maybe my skill set is different than his slightly. And so I need different, whatever. So yeah, I like to play, different things in different keys. I do tons of ear stuff. So I'll play all of those things, pick a tune and I'll just go, okay, great. And I'll play it in all 12 keys at 50 BPM on the metronome with a tuner. And it'll take me an hour and 10 minutes to do Brahms' Lullaby with, a minute of rest in between or something,
Right.
And somebody might go, oh yeah, I don't know. Like one of my favorite ones to do is the second movement of the Haydn. It's such a beautiful melody. And so I remember I started doing that in different keys, just pick a random key. I'm just kind of slopping through it. But that's like, you just find any melody. And so you're getting your ear training done. You're getting your lyrical playing done. You're getting control, you're getting sound, all these different things. So I tend to do a lot of that. And then of course I practice my improvisations a lot. Like I love to practice improvising and just making sure that, that the different styles of what I like to play. I like a stylist guy. I'm not the greatest lead player in the whole wide world. I can play lead and I can play a double C if I have to. And I'm not the greatest classical player in the world. I can, am a sub on, different orchestras and things like that. And of course it's what I do, but my biggest thing is I really enjoyed Warren Looning, and Warren was kind of that guy. He could kind of play anything and be super convincing at it. And I sort of have modeled my career after that. And I love to improvise. So I do a lot of things. I'll just play, a certain thing. I'll work on a mode or whatever in different keys. I like to imitate styles, so I'll really try to play like, Chet Baker or something, and you kind of try to figure out what he's doing. Right. And then you might hear like, like let's say Harry Sweets Edison, and how he plays. And just the vibrato that those guys use. So right. I'm all about all those, and I do that with classical styles and stuff too. And so that's a big part of what I like to do, is just making sure that when I go to play, it sounds like I want it to sound,
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I really like that. That's some exceptionally interesting and helpful tips right there. I mean, so folks, if you haven't been practicing this way, try it, see how it works for you. And I just love that idea of being consistent, but switching up the approach just slightly. That's really great.
Yeah, I mean, that if you're a such and such athlete, you're going to need to do arms every 3 days a week, but maybe don't do it the same way,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's attacking things from a slightly different angle, and yeah, if and this is one of the things I used to tell my martial arts students a lot is that your practice regimen needs to be dictated by your why. Like, why are you doing this? What's your ultimate goal? Because if your goal is to be an athlete, then you need to practice this way. If your goal is to to be able to go into a room of 500 people and kill them all with a pencil, then you need to practice a different way. And and if your goal is to just be in better shape mentally and physically and emotionally, then your practice needs to be completely different. So there'll be some consistent threads in there. You need to do your strength, you need to do your flexibility, you need to do all those sort of things. But the way you focus on it is going to be dictated by the end result. So I think for someone like you who is because you never know from day to day what you're going to be called on to do. So, if all you can do is just do that one thing, you may be the greatest person in the world at that thing, but that's going to limit your ability to work in that very that environment that you're in, which is just you have to be flexible. So I think for people who want to be a more well-rounded, and who shouldn't be, player, especially in the commercial world, this is a phenomenal way of doing it. So
yeah, and I always say to the students and at master classes and stuff, and my favorite statement is lead with desire. So what do you like to do? Somebody goes, I don't really like Louis Armstrong. Okay, then don't study Louis Armstrong. Or I don't really like Dizzy Gillespie. Okay, but do you like Roy Eldridge? Sure. Then at some point, once you study enough Roy Eldridge, you will like Dizzy Gillespie because they're predecessors, and right. So and you'll just you'll find your way. And then if you don't, then you may not have as much money or opportunity or whatever, because you'll realize, oh man, I should be more well-rounded, and you start reaching out further, and that's just up to you. I don't have judgment on that, but I also don't like it when people say, I'm not really about this, or I don't really love that. Okay, then you're probably not going to be able to do movies, or you're probably not going to be on this band if you can't play perfectly in tune, or if you don't have a great sense of time or whatever. You may not be a guy who plays in the Fat. You might be the greatest. There's a lot of great jazz players out there who don't get asked to play in the Fat Band because maybe their sound isn't complete, or man, the hydraulics that you have to play third trumpet or even second or fourth on the Fat Band. There's a lot there, man. There's those. I mean, I would get done, even if I only played one lead chart or something like that, but just playing third trumpet and a couple of solos, man, there's a lot there. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you don't really reserve the right to complain.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to put in the work. But, I think a lot of people, there's been a lot of conversation about, potentially some race things or favoritism things. And I think Gordon has defended himself really well in those conversations. But really, it's never about any of those things, about being a woman or black, white, brown, whatever. I mean, there's lots of, I'm brown. We've got a few of us in that band. And if I'm sorry, if you're not, show me that you can play perfectly in tune like Andy Martin, and then I'm sure there's a place for you in that band.
Yeah.
So I think it's always about that. And then we have to realize that the better you are, the more opportunities you get, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. It's having a clear idea of what you want, commit to it, and then just do the work. I mean, you can't say that you want to be a professional trumpet player playing in LA and then approach it like you're a part-time trumpet player living in, Iowa City.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
That's awesome, man. You know what? I could just talk to you for hours and hours and hours on end, but we're going to come to the last portion of our interview today, which is our speed round. So my speed studies round. If you've ever done Nagel speed studies, here's where we do our little rapid fire. So we're going to have a number of questions. I want your quickest response to this. And if you get them all right, you win a new car.
Let's do it, baby.
All right, here we go. Who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
My wife.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell.
Man, that's a great book. Whew. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
A movie that I played on that just came on Netflix called, oh my gosh, it's with Larry the Cable Guy, and he's in the Army. And Wayne and I played on that movie years and years and years ago. And they fall asleep in a car and they go into Mexico and they think they're in Iraq.
I'm going to have to watch that just for the soundtrack.
It's terrible, but we have tons of bugle calls. It's very funny.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's terrible. Terrible.
All right. All right. Yeah. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
Oh boy, that would be tough. Full-time father. Seriously.
Starring in Mr. Mom 2.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your favorite drink?
Pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks. I know you're talking about alcoholic drink.
Oh, any drink, man. Any drink will do.
Mojito.
Oh,
Strawberry mojito.
Strawberry mojito. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a fruit for drink, but
hey.
I'm not like a huge drinker.
Yeah.
My wife is like an avid like wine lover. She's all into all the stuff, and she's like, "Come on, get it together." And we've gone over friends' houses for drinks, and I'm like, "Oh, this is a big boy drink. I can't handle this," you know.
Well, come on, man. I mean, we were talking about Frank Green earlier. Frank is the king of Kona. So,
right.
Yeah, if you're talking to Frank, it's going to be coffee involved.
Right.
All right. You're going to be hosting a dinner party, and you're able to invite any 3 living people. Who would they be?
Boy. Paul McCartney. Wynton Marsalis.
Okay.
And boy, I want to say somebody like Bill Clinton would be so interesting to pick that guy's brain and all, but like some kind of like famous politician, you know, kind of guy like that would be so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you're gonna have a second dinner party, and you're gonna invite any 3 people from history.
Ooh. Okay. I'd have to say Jesus, of course. That would be incredible to sit with that person. Winston Churchill, probably. And probably Louis Armstrong. Okay,
and he's looking over your shoulders right now.
He is, yeah.
And by the way, I love that. That's great.
That poster is 8 foot tall, man. It's a beautiful. I have it, and I have ones of the Beatles, and I have one of Elvis and Sinatra right over here.
Man, that's awesome. Okay, lacquer, plated, or raw?
Plated, gold, always.
Not platinum.
No, we always joke around. Wayne always used to say, "This is my flagrant display of wealth." just like joking around. But I play so bright naturally that I always feel like anything that can reel it in is always going to be, good for me.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite quote?
At every phase of life, it's important that we are students, teachers, and mentors.
Perfect quote for you. What's your greatest fear?
My greatest fear is that I will not be seen as somebody who has made a substantive contribution in life.
Okay. All right. You're going to be granted any one superpower. What would you want it to be?
Mind reading.
Ooh.
Well, no, that's a dangerous one.
Yeah, that's a dangerous
dangerous one.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
The 7th grade boy in me wants to say X-ray vision.
Yeah, well, that too. Or invisibility. I mean, I think every 7th grade boy wanted that power too.
Right, invisibility, I know. Right.
Yeah. What aspect of trumpet playing do you think is the most overrated?
High notes.
Okay. And what aspect do you think is the most underrated?
Beauty. Lyrical.
Right? You can go back in time to give yourself one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Don't see it as a competitive entity. See it as an individual sport to be discovering the beauty of.
All right. What advice would you give yourself about life?
Boy, hindsight, right?
Yeah.
I would have to say, there's a famous verse in the Bible that basically says, and it's a life concept too, that says, "Be still and know that I am God." And that's a great quote, whether you believe in God or not. That's like, just relax. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah. We forget that what we do has very little effect on what is. So we spend a lot of time kicking and fighting in life, and then it kind of still ends up the same way.
Yeah. 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 I hear you.
Be still and trust is what I would say to my younger self.
Okay. All right. And what do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be that, first and foremost, that I was a man of integrity who genuinely loved people, that was a complete gangster badass at music.
That would be a wonderful thing to accomplish, and you are well on your way. And I do have to say one thing. I am a little bit disappointed in our interview today. And I'm going to tell you why, because I want to be completely honest with you. For those of you who are just listening to the audio version of your podcast, you're not going to appreciate this as much. But Willie is not wearing a bow tie, and I'm exceptionally disappointed in the fact that you're not pimped out. Because
man, listen, on that note, I have to give you a great story. At one point, about a year ago, I clean out all my suits like once a year, and I have all these, anybody that knows me knows how I dress. And I took like a coat from this suit and pants from this suit and a vest from that, and I had a huge pile, and I took it into the dry cleaners, and the guy looks at me and goes, "So, do you like work for the circus or something?" And I looked at him, and I kind of had this like introspective moment, and I go, kinda, yeah. I tell that story all the time. And my wife took a picture of me one time, just right here, from the bust, like this section. She said, "Only my husband could do this." And I was wearing a polka dot shirt with a plaid coat and a striped bow tie and something else on my handkerchief. And she's like, "But it works, it works. He makes it work." So I know I have wild crap. I've gotten so much crap from Wayne and those guys over the years. It's just about the way I dress, and I know.
Hey, I wore this vest just in your honor.
I love it. I was going to mention that right at the beginning.
Hey, well, In the words of one of my mentors, Fernando, it is much better to look good than to feel good, and you look marvelous.
I love that. Beautiful.
All right. So, Willie, man, thank you so much. And as I said before, if you are interested in finding out more about the Practice app, the link is going to be in the show notes. And please make sure that you keep in touch with what Willie's got going on, because he's got some tremendous things in the works, and follow his work. Obviously, he's going to be on all kinds of movies and soundtracks and things like that. And make sure, check him out on Facebook and all the other social media platforms. And
also worth mentioning is that I have a record coming out with the Count Basie Orchestra. It's me singing with the band.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hey now.
Yeah.
Who's on the lead book on that one?
You know what? It was Mike Williams'
It's Mike?
last gig. Yeah, with the band.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and I love Mike, but I was telling Frank, I go, oh my gosh, that would have been something, because I love Frank, and we're friends, and then he was playing with them. But yeah, I'm really excited about that record. It's my newest thing coming out, and
okay,
some of it's with LA band, some of it's with the Basie band, and inspired by Sinatra and Basie live at the Sands. So I'm very excited to share it with the world.
Oh, awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing that one myself. It will go into my rotation, I'm sure. So thanks again, buddy. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking with you more face to face. When I get out to LA, I'm going to definitely look you up, and I'll make sure that I bring 10 of my best outfits with me. So
please, my friend, and God bless you for doing this, and thank you for spreading the gospel of our career and what we do, and the joys and difficulties of it. And it's beautiful that you're doing this, so thank you.
All right, well, thanks for being so raw and honest and open with us today. So all right, so everybody, thank you for checking us out this episode. Remember, we got plenty more episodes in the can, so you can go back and listen to them all, enjoy them. Make sure you share them with your friends. If you know somebody who loves trumpet, you want to make sure they check it out. If you know somebody who hates trumpet, they still need to check it out. So anyway, to wrap it up, as always, peace and slide grease. We're out. Hey, thank you so much for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating connection through our mutual love for the trumpet life. I hope that you learned a few things about today's guest and had some laughs along the way. Don't forget to give us a review. We love those 5-star ratings. And please share this podcast with your friends. We want to see our hang grow for show. Have a suggestion for a future topic or a guest? Hit me up at thetrumpetgurus@gmail.com. Our opening theme was written and performed by Lexi Signor, and all other music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. So in the words of W.C. Handy, life is like a trumpet. If you don't put anything into it, you don't get anything out. So go out there and let your trumpet sound. And I'll see you at the next hang.